Welcome to Module 10, Crisis Prevention Planning. This 10th in a series of online learning modules provides an introduction to care coordination using the Wraparound practice model in alignment with the National Wraparound Initiative. These modules focus on providing an introduction to the practice model, wraparound facilitation skills and competencies to implement the model, and links to further resources for the learner about wraparound practices. The Butler County Family and Children First Council partnered with the Center for School-Based Mental Health Programs at Miami University to produce the learning modules. Please push the forward arrow on the bottom right to advance to the next slide. Here are the module objectives. By the end of this module, participants will be able to differentiate between crises and safety situations and needs, identify steps to assist teams in creating meaningful crises prevention plans, and review facilitation techniques that support the development of the crises plan. Collaborative crises planning assumes that if we can predict, plan, and shape responses to events, we can start working smarter rather than simply working harder. Collaborating with families to name the crises and construct the response is a critical step in developing a durable system of support so that children grow up at home and families can enjoy the support they need to raise children with complex needs. Almost every family in Wraparound identifies times when they are concerned about their family and they are not sure what to do. During these times, there can be a loss of hope and feeling of helplessness. Sometimes immediate crises prevention planning is done during an initial face-to-face with the family in an effort to stabilize a situation immediately. This was discussed in Module 5. In this module, we will focus on crises planning as a team during the planning process. Utilizing the team to develop a crises prevention plan can provide new ideas and consistency. Sometimes this is done at the first team meeting, and sometimes this is done later in the process. The facilitator talks with the team about what and when to incorporate this into the process. Keep in mind that as you get deeper into the planning around underlying needs, some of these crises behaviors may change or even disappear. The process of crises planning is not a 1 or 2 meeting event. The plan can be updated and revised several times while the family is involved in Wraparound and should be a well-rehearsed effort by the time they transition from formal Wraparound. If you would like to read more on collaborative crises planning, click on Collaborative Crises Planning with Families to read Pat Miles' article on the subject. Then close the window and push the forward arrow to continue. An event becoming a crisis is often influenced by 3 factors. Network of responsive support. Does the family have people in their lives who are willing and able to step up and help them react to the event or potential crises? Coping skills. Are the people at the center of the crises aware of the functional strengths and skills they have that will be useful in the event or potential crises? Perceptions. Do the people at the center of the crises think they are in a crisis? If they do, then they are. As crises planners say, if you think you're in a crisis, we do too. Having an effective crisis plan in place can change a family's views on what they can handle. Crises and safety are often difficult to differentiate. The family defines crises when they are concerned about something bad happening and or they are overwhelmed. The situation for them is a crisis. On the other hand, safety plans are typically done when there is a concern of severe harm and the risk of it happening is more imminent. The key with either of these is to take the time to define the issues, break down what has worked and what makes things worse, and to outline what families can do before and when these behaviors surface. Let's review a sample of a functional assessment crises planning worksheet as one way to do a crises plan. The first section helps us to understand the behavior in question from the family and team members' points of view. Remember, Crises looks different to each individual family that walks through our door. Some families will define the behavior as one sibling getting upset and taking it out on others. It could be a plan for a student who shuts down in school when told no and disrupts the class. The key is to get the family, including the youth, to describe what the crisis is for them and what we might see when the person enters into this stage. Team members also should provide input and insight. Questions you could ask are, what specific behaviors or situations are crises to you? What does the behavior look like? How long does it last? Is there a cycle? If the youth has multiple behaviors in question, it may be helpful to tackle them one at a time, as the intentions or underlying needs and the interventions may be different based on what the youth is achieving by the behavior or what are the available supports in a particular environment. This is an opportunity to discover more information about the youth and family that the team can use to provide more targeted help. Let's listen to Sam's team describing crises.
So what does the crisis look like? We know the behavior is physical aggression and property destruction. What does that look like?
It looks like he's throwing things,
Okay.
kicking the walls, finding anything he can get his hands on, putting his fist into the refrigerator, throwing things off cabinets, slamming doors as he runs out them, breaking doors,
Okay.
going outside, kicking things, picking up tomatoes, throwing them out the windows,
Okay.
just anything physically he can get his hands on at the moment. Running, he actually
And
will
he
take off-
actually runs.
He
okay,
runs, he will
yeah.
run,
Okay.
runs down the street.
Okay. So what do we think might trigger this?
Usually, the thing that triggers it the most is any behaviorals. If you ask him to do something and he doesn't want to do it, I think the word, I hate to say it, but no. It could be raining outside. Can I go outside? Son, look outside, it's raining. That's a way of saying no, but he doesn't care. Well, I want to go outside. So it's just that negative oppositional defiance.
Like the disappointment of
Yes,
when
I
this
want
is
to
the
do
plan.
this, and I don't understand
So
why
when
I
he's
can't do it.
disappointed, he can do
Yes,
that.
very disappointed or.
Youth with social, emotional, or behavioral struggles all come to us with varying developmental functioning. Sometimes they are on target developmentally, and sometimes they are delayed at varying levels. Just because a youth is 15 years old doesn't mean they think, feel, or make choices like a 15-year-old. In addition, not all parents know what to expect from their children at different developmental ages. If the youth is young, do they have the ability to use self-regulating techniques when they are upset? If the youth is a teen, is it realistic to assume they have the same logic and thought processes of an adult? Making sure the team is all on the same page for what to expect from the youth will help when brainstorming other replacement behaviors later in the process. This section of the functional behavioral assessment helps to get the team talking about where the youth is developmentally and how this impacts their ability to make choices. The next task for the team is to figure out if something is triggering the unwanted behavior. A common misconception teams have is thinking the behavior happens out of the blue. From the family's point of view, it often feels like an outburst happens all of the time or goes from 0 to 100 with no warning. When the team is able to dig a bit deeper, they are able to sort out some possible events or situations that might be triggering the negative behavior. The reality is there is almost always a reason. Often the youth is not able to identify themselves what has triggered their actions. As team members, we may not know it or see it and have to take a closer look at the surrounding circumstances to better understand the whole picture. Take a look at the questions on this page. Do any of these situations or environmental factors ever lead to you becoming upset? This could be called an antecedent, a trigger, or a precipitating factor. Questions you could ask the team include, Is there something that is making the behavior happen or that the youth is reacting to? Did something recently happen? Look farther back than the previous days. What environmental triggers are there? Where are they? Who's around? Who's not around? Time of day? Season? Stimulus? Time of the week? What behavioral or emotional triggers are there? Behaviors from the other kids or adults? Sensory needs not being met? Overstimulated? Are they sad or frustrated? What physiological triggers are there? Are they hungry or tired? Are they sick or have medical issues going on? Do they have their glasses, fidgets, or other needed assistance? The next part, which connects with triggers, is asking the youth and team, how do we know the youth is in the beginning to show anxiety or starting to get upset? Seeing their cues can be a good indicator they need extra support. These signs are important to recognize, as interventions can happen earlier if we know what to look for prior to the unwanted behavior. Some prompts to help think through these indicators with your team include: what does their body or face look like? Are they flat in their affect? Are they frowning or have an angry look to their face? How does their voice sound? Are they louder, softer? Do they mumble or scream? Are they using different language? Are they hard to understand? Do they have a hard time getting out their thoughts clearly? If I didn't know this youth, what would be clues that they are going into crises? Any behavioral cues? Making punching motions or hands balled in fists? Do they start making risky choices or bullying siblings? What are they doing? Are they pacing or more withdrawn? Are they crying or huffing and puffing? These are all cues that a youth is starting to get upset. Understanding each youth's unique physical signs of stress helps others around act more quickly and in a more helpful way. The next question to ask your team is to understand the positive and negative consequences of the crises. It could be positive to the youth in terms of getting out of class, not having to finish chores, or getting one-on-one attention from a parent. It is also important to recognize the negative and neutral outcomes, such as the police being called, loss of financial resources to the family, fractured relationships, or having a consequence from a parent. Thinking about all of the things that happen immediately, shortly after, and within a day or two might help shed some light on something that is reinforcing the behavior. Remember, in Wraparound, we look at behavior as communicative. Often bad behaviors come from an unmet need. It is important to reflect on the unmet needs of the youth and see if these behaviors are related to that. Here are some questions to consider. Is there anything positive from the youth's point of view that they are getting out of the behavior or outcome? Is there anything about an unmet need that the youth is trying to obtain through these behaviors? What does all this information tell us, and how can we use it? Working through these steps of understanding the behavior helps those on the team make an educated guess about what the youth needs on a deeper level. It is important to explore the needs fulfilled by the crises. Understanding what the youth gets out of the crises may help us identify replacements or alternative ideas to meet that same need. As discussed in previous modules, behaviors are often a way for children to communicate their thoughts and feelings when they aren't able to through words. In terms of crises planning, it is important to ask the team questions that help them think about the connection between behaviors and deeper needs. Here are some questions to consider. What is this youth trying to achieve through their behavior? Are they seeking control or avoiding something? What is this behavior saying without words? Are they asking for support, attention, help? What might these behaviors be a symptom of? Could they be lonely, frustrated, afraid? Could it be related to an unmet need that the wraparound plan is or needs to plan around? Tying unwanted behaviors to deeper unmet needs is the heart of crises prevention planning and ultimately the wraparound process. Looking at triggers, signs, consequences, and patterns can help us better translate the behavior into the message it is communicating. What needs are being fulfilled by the crises behavior? Understanding what the youth gets out of the crises may help us identify replacements or alternative ideas to meet that same need. Follow along while we read the scenario on the screen. While this isn't a full strengths and needs discovery, take a moment to think about what we can learn from this information in terms of understanding the crises. Think about what we have reviewed so far related to identifying the element of crises. Lucy is a 14-year-old teen who lives with her mom, Kathy. Lucy's mom and dad decided to end their 16-year marriage a year ago, leading to a great deal of change for the family. Lucy and Kathy moved to a new city 6 months ago during the summer months. Lucy is now a freshman at Middle Village High School and is having a hard time adjusting to her new school this year. Being the new girl at school, she has faced an increased amount of bullying. Lucy enjoys art class and uses that time as a break in her day to de-stress. Some days, Lucy will refuse to go to school, especially the morning after a missed phone call from her father the night before. Kathy has noticed that Lucy is becoming quieter at the dinner table, and some days she won't say anything at all. She has been spending more time in her room reading, which sometimes helps her relax. At times, Lucy appears as if she has been crying when she comes home from school. Kathy is concerned because Lucy is starting to run away at night and will be gone for multiple days in a row. This also leads to missed days at school. When Lucy runs away, she is usually found at her paternal grandma's house. Lucy is very close with Grandma and feels like she can talk to her. She hasn't been able to see her grandma much since her parents divorced, and she really misses her. Kathy would like to see her wraparound team develop a plan to help Lucy make better decisions when she is upset. What would you say the crisis is for the family in this situation? Is it school refusal? Is it Lucy running away from home? What are some of the things that may be triggering Lucy to make her choices? What information is missing that could be helpful? What happens before or after the event that might be reinforcing the crisis behavior? What can we help the team explore as the underlying need Lucy is trying to meet? The next step to the crisis planning assessment is to help teams look for patterns. This helps the team to identify if there are certain places or people who worsen the crises if it hasn't previously been identified. This also can help the team to identify if there are places or people that help to calm or de-escalate the youth. When, where, and with whom does the crisis most likely occur? When, where, and with whom does the crisis least likely occur? Are there any relevant risk factors? History of being abused or abusive to others? History of suicide attempt? History of self-mutilation? Keep in mind that sometimes the crisis only happens at home or at school, and not because anyone is doing something wrong. It is just the environment. You want to make sure the families and team members don't feel judged during this phase. Another approach to helping families and teams address crises and safety has been developed by Pat Miles, as cited in her document, Collaborative Crisis Planning with Families, a series of tools for wraparound facilitators. Pat's approach views crises and safety on a continuum, with two different dimensions impacting the direction of planning. The first dimension to consider is the family and team's views of the potential severity of the event. Take a look at the continuum on the slide. The family and team should rate the defined behavior based on their perception of the severity. A catastrophic event is one that is likely to cause harm in a more widespread manner. A critical event is one that the team feels would cause harm to a more targeted person or area. A marginal event would have damage that is small in scale, and a minimal event would be almost certain to have very little impact. Events falling into the catastrophic or critical category are more likely to be viewed as safety issues, with the need for the team to plan directly around safety-related interventions. Events that fall into the marginal or minimal level of risk may need as intense of supports. Pat Miles has the family and team next consider the second dimension in determining the level of crises or safety need of the youth. Again, Pat has developed a continuum that helps the family identify the probability or likelihood of the event happening. Pat breaks this down into 5 different levels. An event that is predictable, it is expected by the family to occur. If an event is probable, it is likely to occur, but not imminent. If an event is possible, it is capable of happening. If the probability is remote, it only has a slight chance of occurring. And if an event is improbable, it could occur, but is not likely to occur. Pat has combined these 2 dimensions into a risk assessment matrix, as seen in this slide. When the family and team are able to take into consideration both the level of severity combined with the probability of the event happening, the team can create a plan that makes the most sense for the need of the youth and family. Pat goes on to talk about the importance of helping teams work through proactive responses, or ways to keep the event from happening in the first place, as well as reactive responses to crises, which we will continue to explore in this module. Now that we have explored in detail how to help teams work through the function of the concerning behavior, let's shift to thinking about how to use the information we discovered to build a preventive crises plan. In Wraparound, we tried to think of crises in 4 phases: prevention, early intervention, crisis management, and restoring relationships after the crises. Helping teams work through these 4 steps will help them feel more prepared for crisis situations before they even start, how to minimize the severity of crises, how to respond in the middle of crises, and how to recover after the fact. Let's first look at ways to help teams prevent crises. The first step is talking with teams about what they have found helpful in the past. Help them work through this by asking the following questions. What do we know works? What has worked in the past to keep the crises from happening? What was going on when times were better or the crises was happening less? What has worked in a different setting? What helps the caregiver? Any relevant medical information? Help the team understand some of these things can be done on a daily basis to avoid the crises or stop the crises before it starts. This is an opportunity for the team to see how they can practice strength-based and creative interventions. After we look at what has been tried in the past, it is time to help the team brainstorm some ideas of other things to try. This doesn't mean we will do all of them, but getting ideas to think about for now and in the future can really make a difference. Remember, the crises plan can be adjusted and changed through the process as the team learns more and has more experiences together. The key is to help the team do some proactive prevention techniques in order to create better choices that can help to reduce or avoid triggers, as well as create an environment that is more conducive to meeting the youth's needs. Here are a few things to ask to get the team thinking. Can we avoid triggers or change them? Can we meet a need in a more positive way? Remember working through the intent of the crises behavior as discussed above. How can we use strengths of the team and family as a way to avoid crises? What resources are available in the community? What family or community supports can be utilized? Are there self-care practices we could put into place that reduce stress and chance of crises? Let's revisit Sam's team as they explore prevention of triggering situations.
Yes.
Okay, so what we want to kind of think about is some ways to avoid these triggers or decrease the triggers. And that's going to give us some ideas of what to put into place always. So, asking him to do something that he doesn't want to. What are some things that we can think about doing every day that could help him kind of start to work through this differently than hitting, kicking, throwing things, damaging stuff, and running off?
This is where I need the help. Because if I knew it, I would be doing it, but I don't.
Yeah, I mean, and one of the things that he enjoys doing typically, that he calms him typically, I mean, is it, you know, we talk about choices, is there some things that he can have a choice to do, or that
Not
doesn't
yet,
work?
it's not working. It's not working in therapy. They've given him suggestions, taking deep breaths, taking a time away.
Right.
Those things are not working, and that's why
Are
we're
we
in crisis.
practicing them when we're calm? Because the first step is always doing those kinds of things, not when we're escalated, but in calm moments. So I don't know.
It's a good point. No, he
Yeah.
does, not to my
So you
knowledge.
have to learn, it's like a fire drill. You want to learn those skills before the drill so that when that happens.
That's a good point.
And so you can identify what it feels like to be
Right,
calm.
That's very
you know, and he may not have put that piece together in his mind.
I haven't, so I don't
Okay.
really know.
Yeah, it's
I know,
true.
honestly, I didn't
Yeah.
think, yeah, that's a good point, really. So, yes,
Okay.
yes.
Other ideas of things that we can throw out there that we think might even help him when he's disappointed about things, that things didn't go his way.
A lot of times, if you change the subject,
Uh-huh.
that he'll, you know, just get his mind off of
Mm-hmm.
what he's upset about, and then he, you know, kind of calms down, trying to think of, okay, you done got me totally confused now. I'm mad now. What's going on?
I'm excited about going fishing.
Let's remember our strengths too, because we want to use something that he's good at, especially when we're talking about crisis prevention and intervention.
Did I say on there it said something about him being good at math somewhere?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so math is about problem solving and being able to look at a solution, think of a creative, or look at a problem and think of a creative solution. So how can we use prompts and different questions to get him to think of what else can you do? And if he gets stuck there, give him again a couple of those options, like, can you go to your room and play a video game if it's the rain? Can
Do
you
we think
play with
this
your
is
sister?
do we think this is a prevention thing, or do we think this is when he's already kind of struggling?
Yeah, when, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think the prevention is hard because I think you do so many things proactively to keep him. You know, like what's going to make him mad, and you try to avoid those
Yeah.
situations. You're so good at that.
Well, and
Stores and
I wonder too about, you mentioned about asking him to do things. Does he have any kind of like a responsibilities list or?
He does. We've actually taken pictures of things like to put his clothes into the hamper, brush his teeth, just to give you an example. We took pictures of him brushing his teeth. Those things, he uses those for a while, and then
it gets
it's
boring.
boring. Sometimes, my personal feeling is he does some of the anger to get out of doing what
It
he
works,
doesn't want to do,
yeah.
because it works, because,
Right.
but then what happens is it gets away from him. It's hard to explain, because he can't control that anger, so it gets away from him. Now he's escalated, and things are out of control. I don't think he meant it necessarily to go
Right.
that route, but that's part of why we have the team to help us to diffuse that and think,
One of
okay.
the things that the social worker at the hospital had mentioned is that he does seem to respond to really frequent rewards. So is that something that the team thinks might be a preventative kind of thing? Breaking maybe, we have a strength saying like structure. So how can we kind of put that together for prevention?
it's like a token economy maybe, or some kind of behavior like chart with really what's it called for?
Do you see that as useful at home with him, that he would buy into that?
Because
Maybe
of
for a
his,
day.
I was gonna say,
Right,
that's what I'm
because of
afraid
his
of, you know?
age.
Yeah.
Right.
Remember, sometimes this sounds really well for younger
Yeah.
children, but you're looking at it just doesn't always work for him. It's boring to him, and I'm gonna just, this is stupid.
Right.
This is lame.
Right.
Those are his words.
Yeah.
Those are.
How about the whole liking structure? Does he tend to have a better day when things are kind of all laid out and he knows what to expect?
No, I don't think that really makes a difference for him, because he himself will tell you, he doesn't always know what sets him off. He
He
doesn't
he
always
just wakes
know.
up
Angry.
angry.
And so if we don't know that he's in that mood when he wakes up, and then I was like, son, don't forget, you need to, let's just say, pick up your clothes off the floor or
Right.
something. Now we've got it going. And it's like, you didn't even intend that at all. You're like, and then another day he might just say, okay, Mom, pick up everything off the floor. You don't
So
know.
what are the signs that he's struggling?
Starts clenching his teeth and making fists, and he starts, I'm gonna use the word mouthing. This is lame, this is stupid, this is my room, if I wanna trash it, I can trash it. I'm saying this for all the benefit that everybody that knows and has been in our situation goes, my kid does exactly the same thing. And I'm thinking, oh geez, I'm so glad.
Yeah, it's
Because it
not
makes you
you.
look like you're not a bad parent. It's
You're
not
not
what
by
we're
yourself.
doing. Other children are doing, and I'm like, then what do you do? And we try to brainstorm, and sometimes, they'll come up with something I never even thought of. Some people say, I just shut the door.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay, you're right.
But this is my home, and that's not
Right.
me, so we have to try to incorporate him and us and our family.
The reality is, no matter how much we do to prevent a crisis situation from happening, crises is still a possibility. The next step in helping teams is to look at how to recognize crisis situations early and what things can we do or not do to keep the crises at a lower level. We call this early intervention. At this stage, we need to recognize that the youth has been triggered, so we want to try something to break the cycle and de-escalate them before a full-blown crisis occurs. As we did in the prevention step, we walked the team through questions related to what has worked in the past. Here are a few examples. What has worked in the past to calm the crises? What has worked in a different setting? Maybe school or someone else's home? What has the youth used in the past as a method for calming? Can they have access to that? Again, we want to help the team work through new ideas to try. Use this time to ask questions about reducing the intensity of the crisis situation or ways to de-escalate the situation while keeping in mind the family and youth's strength. Remind the team again of the work done to understand the behavior. How do we recognize the youth is escalating? Can a trigger be removed? Is there anyone the youth can talk to? Can the youth be redirected to another activity, something they enjoy? Can the environment be changed? What about the people around? Is there certain language or words that work to redirect or calm the youth? Similar to prevention, we want to cover the areas of what we know makes things better. In this stage, we want to help the team develop as many choices as possible of ways to redirect the crises before it gets any worse. This is a chance to test their ability to stay together during hard times and persist in stepping up to help the family with the crises. Let's listen as Sam's team looks at additional things to try in early intervention as it moves to escalating into full-blown crises.
Two things that we're gonna do for prevention and two things that we're gonna do for intervention.
Using a
Prevention.
timer.
How about just ask him for prevention? What if I just ask him, how are you
Let's do-
feeling?
Yeah, I think that's a
How
great
do you
Okay.
feel this morning? I mean, I don't know if that'll work or not,
But yeah, it's definitely worth it since
Right.
he's not telling you.
right.
Okay. Okay, so what do we think might help when he starts clenching his fists verbally, stating that, he's going to start breaking things up? We talked about possibly doing a prompt and providing choices. Are there other ideas for that?
Well, does this go back to some of the sensory things that he could do? I know in the past, you've talked about some of the things that he likes to do, which are kind of heavy work things. He likes to dig, he likes to vacuum, he likes to mow the yard. Maybe some things like that that he could do to give him an outlet for all that energy he's got.
Well, he usually, a lot of times he'll go out and start jumping on the trampoline.
Yeah,
Okay,
great.
so trampoline
Yeah.
jumping, okay. Okay. And what do we want to try to avoid? It sounds like
Lectures, lots of
Yeah.
talking.
Yes,
More words.
talking too much,
talking
talking
too much,
yes.
right.
Over talking.
Yeah,
So hard.
And letting him see that you're respecting where he's at right this minute, you know, but you're giving him a way to have an outlet for it.
or maybe approach him in a different way, like saying you think if you get a few minutes, you can pick up your room? You know, not just tell him,
Not just tell. I think that's great.
Just,
Okay.
you know, hey bud, your room looks a little messy, can you
So
pick it
not
up?
just tell Sam what to do. Okay. And if none of this is working, because we know the reality, we're just guessing, this is kind of our baby steps into the crisis plan. One of the things that we're gonna do with our prevention intervention plan is on a regular basis, we are gonna be re-looking at this, we are gonna be adding to it, subtracting from it, we're gonna figure out more and more things that are helpful. So, at this point, what Gil and Tracy have been doing is just calling the police. Other ideas of how to help them manage it when he's gotten just out of control.
I think get Maggie to a safe place is
Okay.
really important so that she feels.
Giving him some space, giving him some cool
Okay.
down time.
Okay, so give Sam space. Okay, awesome, thank you. Great job. We'll put this into place. I'll get a copy of this to everyone and we'll start practicing and moving forward and we'll revise it as we go along.
We also need to make sure the team discusses what exacerbates the crises. Are there things that others should know not to do to avoid making things worse? Are there triggering comments, people, or situations? For example, think about how you feel when you are upset and you are told to calm down. Are there noises and stressors that make you more upset when you are angry? We need to consider these same concepts with the youth. Despite our best efforts, there are times when the crises will occur regardless of the preventions and early interventions we put in place. If this happens, we need to think about how to manage the crises and keep the youth and everyone around safe. Some things to think about with the team are, is the environment safe? What can be modified, changed, or removed to promote safety? What needs to happen to keep everyone safe, including the youth, other children, and pets? Who can provide extra hands to help? Who needs to be called or notified? Each crisis plan, like a wraparound plan, should be unique to the family based on needs and strengths. Keeping everyone safe may entail removing others from the room. Siblings may be told to go to their rooms or to lock themselves in a bathroom. The youth may have a safe place in the home that they may need to go to. Asking for extra help should be a combination of natural and formal supports. Although agency crisis lines are helpful, the goal is to build sustainability for the family. So asking if there are neighbors, families, and friends who can help should be included when generating ideas. It is also important to recognize that sometimes formal supports are needed, especially when safety is compromised. Calling a hotline, mobile crises unit, or 911 may be part of the plan. In this phase, you will try again, determining which parts have worked and which didn't. Your job as the facilitator is to maintain hope and guide the team to follow the principle of unconditional commitment, never giving up. The first crisis plan is often not the final crisis plan for the family and team. As the team works together or experiences different situations, help the team look at those events as opportunities for learning and adjusting the plan. It is important to identify who can help the family or individuals work through these emotions with all parties involved, whether it be a professional on the team or an informal support the family trusts. Who can be responsible for helping the family mend or restore relationships after the crisis situation? Again, this should be an individualized step in the planning process. How much time is needed to cool off and problem solve effectively? Some families or youth may need more time than others to rebuild or resolve conflict. When a crisis does occur, there should be a plan for the team to reconvene afterward to explore the situation and problem solve. Who can help the team problem solve through what worked and what didn't work? When will the team meet to work through what happened and make changes? What did we learn? What worked? What didn't? Wasn't the family able to remember the steps and try the ideas discussed? Don't forget to take some time to ask why the preventive or early intervention steps didn't or did work so that modifications can be made. Reviewing and improving the plan can and should be an ongoing task throughout the wraparound process. Let's look at Sam's team updating plan after they have been utilizing it for a while.
I wanted to call the team back. As I told you on the initial thing, we regularly look at our crisis prevention plan and make changes to it. So you can see we have come a long way from our very first plan. We've got a lot of prevention things now. One of the things that I want the team to look at is some of this prevention stuff, whether it's really working or not, and whether we need to kind of jettison it. And then if there's some other things that we might need to look at for avoiding this, just talking with all of you, that sounded like it was kind of some of the things we needed to address. So initially we had kind of guessed that maybe using a timer for Sam would be helpful, but it sounds like there's been some reactions to the use of that timer. So what does the team think about that piece of it?
It's working.
Are we okay with just getting rid of it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll cross that out. The token economy, we had tried to do some specific cash-in times between 4:30 and before bedtime. Gil and Tracy said that the token economy thing is just really not being helpful at this point. Do we think that there's some other things that might work better?
Maybe more of like a behavior like contract or contingency contract, more age appropriate, like you were kind of talking about. Like he's kind of, it's not so motivating. The tokens, it's kind of dumb in his mind. So finding those things that motivate him, like going out with his friends or.
Okay. Would you like to work with
Yeah, we can do that.
Gil and Sue and Sam and
New
come up with that?
content.
Okay, and the other thing that we talked about was just things to try to avoid. Making unplanned or unexpected changes to Sam's schedule has been it's been really hard for the family to deal with that. So I wanted to get some ideas on how can we work on that, because I think the team recognizes that's still an issue.
What if you use his rigidity for him, meaning that like we know that there's going to be things that are going to happen that are unexpected, and the thing that's expected is the same plan every time something unexpected happens. Does that make sense?
No.
Well, I'm glad you're honest. Okay, so we know
Use Sam's rigidity, I got that.
rigidity works well for him. So because that structure works so well, you can never alleviate all unexpected changes in life. That's
Okay.
impossible. But what you can make rigid and the same is the same response and the same process.
Okay.
Every time we do the
Use
same thing.
same
Yes.
response, same process.
Yes. So that's the consistent piece, and that gives him kind of that security again. Sorry.
So is that something that the quality assurance team could maybe work on?
Yeah.
Okay.
An important element in helping families and teams actually use the crisis plan developed by the team is to create a simplified plan for families to refer to on a regular basis. Families can be overwhelmed during these times, so creating a simplified plan of action for families can often reduce their worry and help them implement the preventative steps created by the team. This can look like a one-page document that the family posts around the house. It could also be in the form of cards that each family member carries with them. This is an area where you can get creative and develop a visual tool that makes sense for the family. This slide shows an example of a crises plan created for a youth in Wraparound. This is only an example and does not include all components other teams may want to include. The point is to individualize a visual tool that is most helpful to the family. A final, yet very important step when crisis planning is to help teams practice or rehearse the crisis plan. Ideally, this would happen before another crisis situation occurs, but can also be helpful throughout the process to ensure each important component and team member knows their role and actions to take to prevent a crisis and intervene early. Rehearsing the plan on a regular basis helps families and teams feel more confident and competent in their ability to handle crisis situations when they arise. Here are a few questions to help the team work through developing a rehearsal protocol. Where should we practice the steps we developed? Who needs to be there? How often should we rehearse? Who can help work through any kinks that come up during rehearsal? Pat Miles offers some tips for effective plans for you to consider as you review the work of your teams. Proactive prevention includes sharing the responsibility for prevention among the team. Avoid making the person who is the most vulnerable to be the most responsible person for implementing the plan. Remember, the art of distraction can be an intervention in and of itself. Also, beware the trap of success. Because it worked doesn't mean you can stop reassessing or working the plan. Lastly, continue to promote family voice in guiding the team's response. Regarding the reactive response, remember the importance of managing everyone. Give everyone a job. Manage and distribute a communication plan of responding to the crises. Negotiate time frames before the event for response, for completion, and for review. Lastly, continue to assess for safety and risk threats. In this module, we have learned to differentiate between crises and safety situations. The difference is related to the immediacy of the risk and the severity of the risk. In initiating planning with the family, the team reviews past crises and assesses the level of risk to determine the kind of response needed. A crisis is defined by the family where we can enlist the team to help in preventing crises, assist to reduce it escalating, and help connect the family to supports to manage the crises. Following the crises, we have planned for ways to restore relationships. In addition, the team reviews the instances where the plan was used to craft a well-rehearsed plan that everyone involved knows what to do. In the next module, we will dig deeper into safety planning with families in Wraparound. Congratulations! You have completed Module 10, Crisis Prevention Planning.